The Duke of Edinburgh remained in hospital this week in London, being treated for an infection. The Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English, is with us now. Rebecca, this was being downplayed at the beginning, but he's been in hospital quite a while now. What's the latest?
He has, hasn't he? I mean, he's, as you know, he's been in hospital since Tuesday last week, and it was meant to be just for a few days of observation. He was meant to be in good spirits, walked in unaided. But obviously, when he didn't come out at the weekend, people started getting more worried, particularly when they saw the Prince of Wales make a 200-mile round trip from Gloucestershire to visit him, and actually came out looking like he had tears in his eyes. So on Tuesday, a week to the date he went in, the palace did give us another statement. They said that a little bit more information, that he's been treated for an infection. We don't know what that infection is, but he's an elderly man who has suffered bladder infections in the past, as is quite common, but made very clear, although that he was responding well to the treatment, he would be in for several days. And the indication that's been given to me is that he might not even come out until next week.
Do you think that he'll be up to many more visitors from the extended family?
Oh, this is always a bit of a tricky one, because actually members of the royal family don't tend to visit each other in hospital. That's not because they don't care, but they know a royal visit to hospital actually comes with quite a great deal of disruption. And obviously that's something they don't want at the best of times, let alone now. So I think as long as he seems to be responding well to the treatment, probably not, but never say never. And I think if he does start getting a lot of visitors, we would start to read something into that, I have to say.
Let's bring our panel in now. Joining us on the show this week are the Mail's star columnist Sarah Vine and Saturday Diary editor Richard Eden. Welcome. Richard, what do you make of the way the palace has been handling communications about Philip's condition?
It's a tricky one, because we all understand Prince Philip's desire for some privacy when it comes to medical matters. But, you know, as the consort of the head of state, there is understandably a public interest in knowing his condition. And I do think the palace has handled it quite badly, because they give out such few details, you know, just saying he's going in because he's been feeling a bit unwell, just as a precaution. And then days later, they finally admit that he has an infection, which presumably is why he was admitted in the first place. But then they don't even say what type of infection. And so when you don't have any specific information like that, you just get more and more speculation. And, you know, in this day and age with the internet, and it just encourages rumours. I think it'd be much more sensible to just give straightforward details about the nature of the infection and be honest about the situation.
Sarah, what do you make of the fact David McClure, who's a friend of this programme, was basically saying earlier this week that, you know, treat us like grown-ups, give us the facts about this head of state who taxpayers pay for? Is there an argument for that sort of entitlement to the information?
I think that there has to be a slight veil of privacy when it comes to medical matters. I mean, we don't need to, he doesn't have to have all the gory details of what's wrong with him published, I think. But I mean, it's always been the same with royals, hasn't it? I mean, in the olden days, they used to put a bill outside the palace, didn't they? You have to keep the public informed. I mean, he's very, very old. You know, he's a very, very old man, and I'm sure he's got lots of things wrong with him. I don't know. I mean, I think Rebecca's right. It probably is a bladder infection. He seems to have these a lot, and old men get them. But I mean, whether we need to hear the gory details, I think he has entitled a little bit of privacy in that respect, I have to say. I think they've handled it okay. I think I have a theory which is a bit mad. Would you like to hear it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I have a theory, and I'd love to know what Rebecca thinks about this. I have a theory that the reason they didn't make this decision, they made the statement last week about Meghan and Harry, is because the Queen and Prince Philip have suddenly realised that they're both getting on a bit, and they needed to sort of actually have a solution to this problem, because they didn't need to make a decision until the end of March, because that was when the review was up. And I wonder whether they suddenly both thought, okay, he's not very well, he's in hospital, we can't let this one ride. If something happens, we have to have made our sort of decision clear. And I have a theory that that's why they made that statement about Harry and Meghan, because I think they're both perhaps a bit mindful of the fact that they are, you know, getting towards the end of their lives, and perhaps, you know, having Philip in hospital slightly focuses the mind on these kind of quite important constitutional matters.
Rebecca, any thoughts on that?
Well, I suspect there is an element of that in the background, but I have to say the reason why, and I'm sure we'll get on to Harry and Meghan as usual in a minute, but Harry has been pushing for this to be decided from fairly early on this year. And in fact, I was told that they were going to make the announcement earlier, but it was actually pushed back because Philip was taken ill, and quite frankly, the Queen had other things on her plate to deal with. But as I say, I'm sure you're right, and it's something that they would like to try and sort out and move on from, because they are in their twilight years.
So, Richard, what do you think about the fact that obviously over the last 12 months, there have been a lot of restrictions about hospital visits for people who can't see their relatives? Do you think that's going to play well that Charles has been to see Prince Philip? Is that fair?
I mean, the truth is we don't know the full details of exactly why Prince Charles was allowed to visit. But I think generally people will be sympathetic. They know they've all wanted to visit. Everyone's wanted to visit loved ones in hospitals or care homes or this type of thing. And they know that exceptions are made when someone's very ill or because of their age. So I would say generally people will be sympathetic, but we don't know the full nature of Prince Philip's illness and why Prince Charles was allowed to visit. So it's very hard to comment.
I mean, I can understand why people would be upset. I think there are a lot of people who haven't been able to say goodbye to their relatives. There were some awful scenes towards the beginning, particularly in the first lockdown. I think as far as the visitation rights have changed now, I think it is now okay for people to visit their very elderly relatives. I do feel for people who haven't been able to say goodbye to their relatives, it must have been awful. But he is now allowed to visit, and two wrongs don't make a right. I think that those are the rules. He can go, and I think that's absolutely fine.